And the next morning I felt as though all those prayers were thrown into an empty void, because it wasn't 10 days. The next morning, Nancy went to go be with Jesus, the one she loves the most.
What's your story?
So, yeah, my story is I'll start at the beginning of I'm actually grew up in Canton, Georgia, and lived here for many years. And man, I'm one of those ones that's, I don't have this crazy testimony. I remember at 5 years old, 6 years old, walking down the aisle on a Sunday night to give my heart to Jesus. And it was just a real thing. I remember turning to my mom and saying, "Hey, can I go down there?" And I remember praying and accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And just grew up around church. I'm one of 5 kids, and so full house. My dad was a believer, but struggled with alcoholism, so that would peer its head in our family a lot. I think at around 12 years old, like I made a decision then, but at 12 years old, it became real. My dad went away to rehab for his addiction. And I remember being like 12 years old and just climbing on my bunk bed and talking to God and just praying. And like, it was no longer this fairy tale, this thing. It was like real. Like he met me there as I cried out to him. Man, and just pursued God. Just like, it was just natural for me, like at a young age. And, yeah, so that, and then started going to church in this area, and felt called to ministry while going to Kennesaw State University, and got open doors for just a whole different thing of how God just leads us, even at a young age. Ended up going down to school down in Florida, and wasn't even sure what ministry I was going to be called to. I thought I'd come back to Atlanta and be a youth pastor and stuff, but there in Bible school, we had a prayer meeting every single Tuesday night. And I was a second semester student, and very different Bible school, a lot of rules and all this stuff. You weren't allowed to date your first semester. They wanted you to focus on Jesus and not just getting a spouse. But so I was in my second semester and at this prayer meeting, and there I am praying, and got distracted during my prayer by this cute blonde girl, and she was praying at the missions area, praying for missions, and just saw her heart there. Just was like, man, who is that? I hope she's a new student, And so crazy long story, but man, it just, the rest of that night I just like prayed, God, help me meet that girl. Her name is Nancy, and so just I actually ended up running into her that night at Walmart right after that prayer meeting. And I mean, I was one that wasn't like crazy girl crazy. I came home to my apartment with my friends, and I was like, guys, I think I met the girl I'm going to marry. And so they were like, what in the world? And like just like shocked and all this stuff. And it was a small Bible school, so I was setting my claim before everybody else saw it at school. And so the first semester she was not allowed to date, and so I hung out as much as I could. I became the social calendar coordinator of trying to get groups of people together so I could hang out with her. And so that time goes by. When she becomes second semester and available to date, I share my feelings with her and tell her how I feel. And I had fallen headfirst into the friend zone, and terrible place to be. You share your feelings, and she just says, "Oh, I just can't foresee it. I don't want to ruin our friendship. I just see you as a good friend." And I'm like, I'm looking for more than a friend, and all of this. So just this like heartbreak kind of feeling. And that was about a 1.5-year journey. I asked her out 7 times over a 1.5 years. Got awkward, got weird, but yet we would continue to hang out in the same circles. My friends would be mad at her of like, quit breaking his heart. And that was the entire time in Bible school, was like chasing this girl and my heart being broken. Even stayed an extra semester to hang around just for the opportunity longer. I hug her goodbye on graduation day. So I thought I would never see her again. I was going to Mexico right after Bible school, and she was going up to Chicago suburbs, live with her sisters. Anyhow, while I was there, some missionaries had invited me to come to Kingston, Jamaica to help start a children's home. And she knew I was going there, and I was going to go to Mexico first. If I could do Mexico for 3 months, then I could commit to going to Jamaica as a missionary for a year. And so while I was in Mexico, she applied with the same missions organization. And out of 2,500 missionaries to be assigned to as a missionary associate, they call her up and they say, we need you to go to Kingston, Jamaica. And so she said, she's kind of a pretty stubborn girl. She says, I can't go there. There's a boy there that likes me. They're like, I think you're reacting. He said, no. She goes, no, you don't know. This boy's going to think this is God's will. And so anyhow, long story short, a year and a half after graduating from Bible school, thinking I would never see her again, we end up on the same property helping start this children's home in Kingston, Jamaica, up in the Blue Mountains. And there I was already clearly in love with her, but there her eyes were open to the glory before her, and she fell in love with me, and we got engaged in Jamaica, and it was just a wonderful time. And then went on from there, became college young adult pastors in Central Illinois.
So did you guys get married in Jamaica?
We did not get married in Jamaica. We came home. I went to go work at this church, and she went and planned the wedding in 3 months in Ohio, and I showed up at the wedding. That's all I had to do. I didn't have to plan anything. It was like, get your tux size, and that's it. So great way to be married. Married in another state where all the planning takes place. So we're plugging away there, doing college young adult ministry, and then we're feeling this like, man, there's still this heart for missions. Felt ourselves settling, and like, okay, before we settle anymore, like, let's go jump to do this. So we apply. Jamaica was a 1-year assignment. This was like career. Like, we were going to go for career missionaries. And through conversations, we're on our way to Mozambique, Africa. And we have to raise funds, speaking at a lot of churches, sharing the heart to go care for AIDS orphans in Africa, partnering with the local church there in Mozambique. And during that time of raising funds, our first son is born, Levi. And then we go to Portugal to learn Portuguese for a year. And while we're there, my daughter Jade is born in Portugal. And then we get to Africa. We're working away with the church, just kind of getting acclimated. And about a year into our time in Africa, our oldest son, Levi, had really degressed and was having some significant developmental delays. In fact, he had stopped speaking. He was coming up on 3 years old and lost all of his language. Here we are in a third world country. We had to travel all the way to Cape Town, South Africa to see a pediatric neurologist. And she was very straightforward. She says, your son has autism. If you do not return to the States with the resources that are there, you will lose your son. He'll withdraw to himself. And so here we were, a year of fundraising, a year of language, a year of just getting used to Africa. And then we had shipped everything we owned there. And we had to kind of come home. I knew it was the right thing for my son because I'm first called to be a father. But I was ticked. I was angry at God. It's like, I'm a missionary. Aren't you supposed to take care of your missionaries? Just hard to trust them again, of like, why isn't he looking out for us? And the fears of that, the fear of like the future of your future vision of what your relationship with your son is going to be different. Like, you have no vision of the future. Come back to Illinois and just kind of live with family for a while, figuring out what's next. And my wife, Nancy, had great faith through that and just dove in deep of faith and worked hard with Levi of getting him the help and resources and coaching him. And fast forward to today, he's completely verbal, completely mainstreamed into high school, a junior, going to graduate. Like, if you met him, you wouldn't know. So God has brought him so far. But man, that was a tough season of like, you went to go do this and then you're home. We landed in the Illinois area, Chicago suburbs, and went on staff at a church for a while, then felt transition and change coming. And one night my wife just turned one of my sermons on me and said, what would you do if you truly believed God was with you? I used to preach that. Like, what would you do if you truly believe, if money wasn't a problem, if resources weren't a problem, if like what would you do if you truly believed God was with you? And so she turned my own sermon on you, which awesome, right? And I said I would plant a church right here in this community where these schools have helped our son, and we meeting people. And so in 2013, we planted a church called River City Church in St. Charles, Illinois, and it was awesome. Saw so many people come to know Jesus, people getting baptized, people introduced to the Holy Spirit, and just a great community built there. So that was our life of just following God, faith steps, praying for things, seeing miracles happen, seeing awesome things answered, prayers answered. Then through some transitions and through some change, we were wanting to head back down south, and just kind of felt like God was calling us to come here. And through some transitions, and we tried to go on staff. We went on staff for a short time at a church in Florida, and it wasn't the right fit, and loved them and all this, but just like wasn't the right place for us. And happenstancely, like we kind of like, my wife, we were like, what do we do now? And she's like, let's go to Georgia. Let's go stay with your mom for a while and figure out what's next. Like, we've been in ministry for 20 years at this time. Let's go figure out, let's just take a break and see what God has next for us, that we make the right decision. And I was not excited about a 40-year-old man married with 3 kids moving into mom's house. But it was for a season. So that was March of 22. We ended up getting our own place, Cherokee County, and getting settled. Kids are doing well, and getting vision for what's next. Getting connected with guys and men that I'd known from years past, and God was putting on our heart to plant another church in Canton. And we were just approved by a church planting organization in October of 22. And I was ready to go. I had the website, bank account, 501c3, all set up, ready to go. And Nancy looks at me and says, well, let's just enjoy the holidays. Let's just let's just take this entire year. Let's enjoy Thanksgiving. Let's enjoy Christmas without that. We'll wait till January to go all in on this. And reluctantly, I said, okay, I'll wait. So that's a little bit of where we've been. And then Thanksgiving week of 22, we actually broke away for a little bit and went up to Pigeon Forge as a family. We were ziplining through the mountains on Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And she was not feeling too well. She kept on having headaches, and I was giving her ibuprofen and rubbing her head in the morning and stuff, just like a headache. Thanksgiving Day, she was really not doing well, and I'm kind of dizzy feeling and just like off balance. And the next day, she woke up and her left side was numb. And she's like, I need to go to the emergency room and see what's going on. And on Friday after Thanksgiving, she walked into Northside Hospital. You know, just thinking some kind of weird flu thing or something. And by the end of that day, they had found a mass on her brain. And just the shock. We weren't even sure what this even meant, and it was a blur when I look back of when that doctor even said that. Like, I couldn't remember. Like, I thought it was in one location, and just you just like, you don't even know how to process that news. But we just, by that Saturday, her left side, she said it felt like 100 pounds. She could barely lift up the left side of her body. By Sunday, she had a walker, and on Monday, I pushed her outside in a wheelchair. And by that time, they were going to do a biopsy on Tuesday, but they were pretty convinced that it was a very aggressive cancerous tumor, which ended up being glioblastoma, which I didn't even know what that was until this. And pushed her outside in the wheelchair that day. And not afraid, not in fear. She was shocked of what was going on, but she said, Damien, if this is the end, let it be the end. I don't want to fall apart for 6 months to 2 years in front of my kids. I want them to remember me for who I was. And I kind of dismissed it. I was like, no, we're speaking faith. No, we're not gonna claim. Like, no, come on, we're gonna get through this. We've gotten through other stuff. And she just kind of had this piece of like, if it is, just let it be. And you process that later on, but in the moment you know what's going on. And the next 11 days just went very fast of just getting our people praying, pursuing doctors, and she had that biopsy, and it feels like as after that biopsy, she never fully was Nancy again, never fully woke up. Prayers and connections, we get her transferred to Emory Hospital, where they're about to do a surgery to relieve some of the pressure and the swelling around this that's causing her to be lethargic and barely able to stay awake. And we're in the pre-op room, and the nurse, I'm the only one in there, about to do the surgery. The pre-op nurse goes, "Oh, you got the president's surgeon." I said, "The president's surgeon?" And she goes, "Yeah, he did surgery on Beau Biden. That's the closest you get to having the president's surgeon." Again, we had our whole world praying. And so I was like, here we go, God. There we go. Like hope rising up. And he comes in and he tells me what the surgery is and what he's going to do, and he's confident to do it, but he says, "I want to let you know that I can't save your wife, though. I can do this surgery, and if I do it," he goes, "it gives us about a month, but it doesn't change her condition. It doesn't change where she's at." He goes, "This thing is very aggressive. This tumor has grown in a week." He said, "If I don't do anything, we have about 10 days. And of course, what she said came to my mind of, if this is the end, let it be the end. Because he said, at best, with chemo, with radiation, with this surgery, it's 6 months, but this is the quality of life." And so went out and talked to her parents, tearful, and just said, "We're going to fulfill her wishes, but we're going to pray. God doesn't need 6 months to do a miracle. He can do a miracle in 10 days. And so that was Wednesday, December 7th, and there was probably 5 to 6 churches across the nation that hosted prayer meetings specifically for Nancy. There were people in other nations praying. There was just talking thousands of people praying for Nancy. And I was full of faith that he was going to answer that prayer. That night, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to get a vision of heaven and see Jesus, and she's going to come back and have this experience. And she had always kind of been very supportive of ministry, but she was one in the background, and I was like, man, she's about to come to the forefront. I had all these pictures and visions of how I thought God was going to answer that. And to bed that night, exhausted. And the next morning, it felt as though all those prayers were thrown into an empty void, because it wasn't 10 days. The next morning, Nancy went to go be with Jesus, the one she loves the most. And I was not there, but her best friend was there, and her parents are there, and they said it was the most peaceful passing. But that's hard to wrap your mind around. Because I could sit here and tell you stories of how God provided for our rent when we were planting a church, how he paid for the school that we rented. My wife and kids prayed for a dog, and we got that same dog. Got my bicycle stolen in Chicago, and she prayed for it, and we found the bicycle that was stolen. Like these crazy things. And so you got a God that will answer these prayers that seem ridiculous compared to one that we were asking. And it's been tough in it. Even this morning, we are 13 months in. My youngest, I was singing that song. Been playing a lot lately. I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he answered, and that's why I trust him. My 12-year-old said, I don't like that song. I sought the Lord, and he said nothing. Why do I trust him? that's been this year of kids grieving, and they all grieve in different ways. Kids thinking that my oldest is all church talks about is miracles and healings. And their mom, who she was not a saint, but she was very close, very loving, very kind, a mom that loved being a mom. Why, God? There was all kind of moments this year of I went, when you're grieving as a dad, you feel as though and you got grieving kids, you're a broken thing trying not to be broken, because you got to just show up for them and care for them and figure your stinking life out. Like, I barely went grocery shopping. I was given a list of 5 things to pick up from the grocery store on my way home from work. I didn't meal plan. I made breakfast on Saturday mornings. She paid the bills. It's like wake up to this new reality of like, all of this is on you. And their hearts and their grieving and their loss and their questions and their anger at God, and they get it. I mean, they have grown up in church with their mom and dad being pastors of the church. And I was there, for a while. It's like church was offensive. Like, worship was impossible, because I would sit there and imagine, it's hard to sing the songs, and then also there's songs that she would sing and love to sing, and those are the memories you have. And so it's been a lot, and yet God has been ridiculously a blessing to us, and I can feel all of that, and yet say that we have been seen and cared for by people and by God. I just had 4 other widows at my house yesterday that have lost their wives within the last between less than a year to 2 years. And I just, you don't compare stories and stuff, but just God's favor and blessing and the provision that He's made for us of healing time has been a lot. And so you reflect on things. I remember about a month into it of just walking with the kids and just feeling heavy that night. I walk outside and I hadn't really been praying. I started yelling at God. And it's like that, but it's like all the disappointments of life. The disappointment of Africa, the disappointment in other ministry things, the disappointment. My younger son has Crohn's disease. All these things of like, God, I trust you. God, we're trying to serve you. And all the disappointments just, I don't know if you've ever been there, this come flooding in. And I was just yelling at him and it's like, why do you want to squish me? Why do you want to squish me like a bug, and then you want me to turn around and praise you? I was just like, and then as I'm walking, it starts raining. I'm walking through my neighborhood trying not to look like a crazy person. But then it starts raining and I just got more mad. And I started, this is what you do. I finally get out here to talk to you and you just rain on me and you just don't even let me come and talk to you. You're going to make me go back in that house. And just like this, and I'm not an angry person, just like this anger rose up. And I shared that with a friend about 2 days later. And I said, maybe God wasn't raining on you. Maybe He was grieving with you. And we have a hard time imagining a God that grieves. And that's what grief, I think, shows us, is like just a glimpse of how God grieves over this world that has been impacted and affected by sin. That he's a grieving father that wants his children back and is willing to do whatever it takes to get them back. So it's been a lot this year. And I know people can speak of their loved ones of like they were perfect, but like I mean, I share my love story of like I chased her for 3 years, and I'd always joke around and say like I worked hard to win her over for those 3 years, but then I had the easiest, most gracious marriage, like an easy marriage, because she knew the Lord and she had her confidence came from Him. He fulfilled those things that I could not, and she knew that. So yeah, it's I'll back up to other things that just have been revealed. Maybe speak to some married people out there. Is through the years, once we had kids, every couple years we'd be out alone, and Nancy would have this conversation. She says, if I die, if you die, what do you want to do? I hated that conversation. Like, why are we talking about this? And she was like, no, this is important. She had read it in a book or marriage conference of like how important that was to have those discussions, and at different stages of life. And she's like, well, if I die, she goes, I'll be sad, and I'm gonna move home to Ohio and live with my parents for a while and figure it out from there, and this and that, and what she said. And she was like, if I die, she says, made it very clear, I want you to have me cremated. Don't spend money on a tomb and a casket. Instead, take the kids on an amazing vacation. I want you to be remarried. You're a good husband, and I want you to find love. This time we were living in Illinois, and we were Illinois, Africa. Like, as a married couple, we never lived in Georgia, only for those 9 months prior. And she said, would you think about moving to Georgia? And I said, I don't know. This is our community here. Like, the kids don't really know Georgia. We go there and we visit grandma, but like, Georgia's not really home to them. And she's like, I think you should prayerfully consider moving to Georgia. And I'm like, just kind of pass that by. And then she would say often, and well, I'll back up, that even the last year, she would just say in statements, she was very complimentary, and she would say, hey, Damien, I just want to let you know, if I died today, I die a happy woman. You give me a good life. And I'm not saying she had a death wish. It was just the Holy Spirit just preparing and saying things. And so in this year, we fulfilled her wishes of having cremation. Amazing friends invited us to come to Hawaii on their Hawaii vacation. A group of churches raised money for our plane tickets to go there. So we got to do that. We got to do what she said. And the fact that we unplanned, not in our own plans, it actually felt like a failure. And we really questioned, like, God leading us, that we landed in Georgia 9 months prior, and just to settle into our neighborhood and get the kids settled in the school right before. So all that to say of like the sovereignty of God is hard to wrap our mind around. In that verse, He ordains the steps of the righteous. But if we listen, He is. And it's this thing of, even in these painful things, we're learning to trust Him and see these little things that He's doing along the way. We just passed the 1 year mark of her being gone a month and a half ago. We just celebrated her second birthday without her in January. And together with my 3 kids, we kind of launched this new initiative called Temporary Apparel, Here Now, Heaven Forever. And it's a kind of an homage to my wife, Nancy. If you had known her and if you had met her, all of her best friends, everybody who knows her knows that if you talk to her for more than 2 times, you know that she talked about heaven and the new heaven and the new earth. And Randy Alcorn's book, Heaven, was her favorite book. And she just dreamed about this earth being fully restored to how the way that God intended it to be. Like, she would dream about it. And she made signs and did things around the house of saying, today I choose joy. Today it's a good day for a good day. She just I got her to preach one time. 10 years of lead pastor. I got her to preach one time, and she preached on speak life and the power of words. That was her favorite Bible verse. Life and death is in the power of the tongue, and those who will eat of its fruit. And so she so believed in speaking life to people. And so we've kind of launched this, and it's kind of taken off, and it's giving hope. And it's reminding us that of a few things, that this life is temporary. It is so temporary. 1 Corinthians says that what is seen is temporary. What is unseen is eternal. And yet, possibly you, get wrapped up into what is temporary every day. We get our focus on this temporal stuff instead of what is eternal. And so that means that my grief, my suffering, and my pain are temporary. They're not forever. That He will heal them. I'm hopeful that He will heal it in this life and fully, completely in the life to come. And those things that, we can be so short-sighted of like whatever I'm facing right now is like all consuming me right in my face. And the fact is, most of these things that consume my thoughts and minds in a month or two, I don't even remember. James tells us life is but a vapor. And so life is short, eternity is long. Let's live like it. It's kind of the heart behind it. And, we're holding on to the hope of heaven. That's what gets us through, is that there's a hope of heaven. That is our hope as believers in Jesus. Do I have questions? Yes. Is there times when bitterness shows up and it wants to be my friend all day long, and I have to fight the bitterness. You have to fight resentment and anger and all of that. Trust that he does see it, He does know it, and that death was never part of the plan. That's why it stings so much. It's a result of sin. We were not intended to die. And it's a reminder to us that this is not the way that things are meant to be. But yet, because of Jesus, that verse ticked me off for a while. Death has lost its sting. I'm like, it stings pretty dang hard. But it's lost its eternal sting. And for a saint to go from this life to the next, a believer in Jesus, it's the glory. God is excited about welcoming us into eternity. And so there's a lot of things. You think you know a lot as a pastor, as one in ministry, and listening to a lot of things. But I've just come to see that God is so much more mysterious than I ever thought or imagined. He's so much closer and aware. I don't know how. He's so much more closer and aware than I probably even assumed. But it's not hard. There can be deafening silence in those times too, of when you're searching for God and where are you and what are you doing. I tried in that time of anger and frustration. I tried to be agnostic. It lasted for about 2 hours. It gave no hope. Agnostic means that you believe in a creator, but he walked away and he's not interested, he's not involved. I wanted to have that approach. But like with a foundation, like you can't walk away from it. It brought no peace. I couldn't argue with the other things that I know to be true. I couldn't argue with how I know the Word of God is true. The Bible is this amazing book that tells the story, one unified story of the redemption of this world. You come to a place that you want to walk away and you want to forget it, but you're too deep into it. And it's kind of a frustrating place to be for a minute because you think you want to find peace somewhere else, but that is the peace that it brings. So we're just kind of on a journey of, God, what do you got next? Never would imagine this would be my story. Never, ever, ever. But here we are. And healing is coming. There's laughter in our house now sometimes, and joy. And there's still sad moments, and there's still just the working through it. But we're in this time of, some people call it the new normal, or the unplanned life, the rearranged life, and it's becoming a little bit more, we're adjusted, but we're learning to trust Him and what He has next. Thank you for letting me share my story.
It's amazing.
So what I didn't say earlier was when we were in Jamaica, after me chasing her for so long and we're finally dating, Nancy would sometimes, went through this dating, not dating, and she would be so confused about, she would just straight up tell me, do I only like you because, you're the only American around here and I'm just comfortable, breaking my heart more. And one day she was praying and she would say this, and she said this up until the month before she died. She would tell people the only time she ever heard from God was not to go to Jamaica, not to go to Africa, not to plant River City Church, all these things that we did in our ministry. My time was there in Jamaica. She was in her room praying, and she was and she was so worried about marrying the wrong person. She would always say, your second most important decision is who you marry. That's how she counts people. Following Jesus, number one, who you marry, number two, because they lead how your life's going to be. So she was so, being a pastor's kid, so worried about it. But anyhow, so she was praying, and that's the only time she ever heard God audibly speak. Said, Damien is the one for you. And for years, I would love telling that story and brag on that. As my one friend says, bro, God was your wingman and all this. But about a month or two after she passed, I'm reading through Job and reading Psalms where it says He numbers our days, He knows our beginning to our end. And it would make me so mad of God, you said Damien is the one for me. Nancy, you told Nancy that. And you knew at 41 years old that she would die and I would be left as a single dad taking 3 kids. So you chose me for this, and I would get so ticked. And it's so weird how one day I'm ticked about it, and then a day when I'm kicking butt, and I got everybody to school, and I made dinner, and I even got to go to my men's group that night. I was like, you called me to this. And grief is this weird thing, and this sovereignty of God mixed into it, and the grace for what He calls us to. His grace is enough.